Coastal Carolina takes the ball, marches to the goal and kicks it on through. Proud to be a shot through and through. We'll shout our colors, go teal, go teal, and then we'll yell out and runs, and our beloved Chanticleers will win this game. Coastal Carolina.
Welcome to the G5 Hive and our next installment of our Worker Bee series, where we deep dive into the G5 college football landscape with the folks that know the teams the best. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. If you're listening in podcast form, please rate and review. Today, we'll be headed over to the Sun Belt Conference to take a look at the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers, who finished 6-7 in 2024, capping off their season with an appearance in the Myrtle Beach Bowl. They wrapped up their 2025 spring practice on April 5th with a special guest joining us today. He is the owner, editor, executive producer of the Coach and Crew Show. He is the coach. He is Charlie Krausse. Charlie can be found on X at Charlie_Krausse. Welcome to the show, Charlie.
Hey, thank you. I love those little. I know we were just talking off air about them, but those video segments, golly, it's a kind of nostalgic because I'm like, I was at that one, I was at that one, I was at that one. You know, a little too far back for me. I was at that one, I was at that one. It's just such a great remembrance and gets you excited, a little bit of goosebumps going. I'm ready.
Well, glad to have you aboard again, and I'm excited to talk a little Sun Belt and Chanticleer football. But before we get into that, for those who are just tuning into the G5 Hive for the first time, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how long you've been involved with Coastal Carolina football?
So that's a great question. If math skills are correct, and I was not a math major, this is about years 5 or 6 going into it, then helping out covering Coastal Carolina. And just who they are. Full disclosure, I've had one of my kids graduate from Coastal Carolina, and my second one is a rising junior, if that's the right phrase of saying. So there is some hometown connections where 2 of my 3 kids that go to school there went to school there, and the connection is strong. So it's become a new home for me and a great place. And I know this is a cheap plug, but the reality is that staff has been phenomenal to me over the past 5 or 6 years. Just a top-notch A+. The entire SID program is phenomenal. So it makes you want to come back and continue helping do your little part and push out the word and continue to help in any little bit you can.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always nice when you get treated nice by good people. It's easy to want to continue to do that. All right, let's move over to some Chanticleer football talk. Tim Beck has hired Drew Hollingshead to be his OC ahead of the 2025 season. Drew spent time as the inside receivers coach for Mississippi State in 2022, and he was the co-OC and quarterbacks coach for Western Kentucky in 2023 and 2024. Can you describe the type of offense that Coach Hollingshead plans to run here at Coastal?
So here's what people need to learn or remember. This name, Mike Leach. All right. He is from the Mike Leach family tree. Now, I'm sure there's some pirate heritage there somewhere, but that's the most important takeaway is he's bringing that Mike Leach style. I'm sure he's put his own flavor to it. Let's not kid each other.
Sure.
But Mike Leach has a very special way of looking at things. And most people, for example, let's use the phrase balanced offense. When most people hear the phrase balanced offense, it's about 50% run, 50% pass. That's how they view balanced. When you're talking Mike Leach football, when you're saying balanced, we've got five weapons. The X receiver, he's going to get about 20%. The wide receiver, he's going to get about 20%. The Z, 20%. If they use an H-back or tight end, about 20%. And then your halfback running back, there's about 20% as well. That's also balanced. So now a rhetorical question, who's more correct or who's less wrong, and what the approach is going to be. So expect to see something like that this year with a lot of quick read, handoff, quick read. Oh, long pass deep, quick read, handoff, long pass deep. I mean, it's just going to be a whole bunch of different things being thrown at you. And then it's the only question that's really going to be figuring out is the tempo and speed. All right. I don't think it's going to be Lane Kiffin, lane train fast, but I expect them to be moving with some sense of urgency and purpose, to say the least. So there's a lot coming at you. And the word I've been using to myself since I've heard the hire is giddy. I am just simply giddy to see what this offense is going to look like opening weekend up in Charlottesville. I think it's going to be a whole new look. It's going to be a whole new package. And you got to go backwards as well to when Coach Beck was initially hired. He was hired when Coach Chadwell took the Liberty job and wanted to just go that route. And, that's what happens. And that's college football 101. So when he gets hired about what? Maybe 10 days before the first recruiting window closes. He's not only just trying to bring in recruits, he's trying to save current recruits, much less put it together a coaching staff. Year one, I don't want to say it survives, but definitely puts together a good piece. Finds himself out in the furthest bowl game possible, unhumanly possible. They go to the Hawaii Bowl and they beat San Jose, and it was a defensive effort, and they just a really good look, and it was just a learning curve all around. Year two, some of those same pieces decided, I want to be elsewhere, and some of the coaches staff had the same mentality. It's nice here, but I'd rather be X. And Coach Beck's got this phrase, and I believe Dan Campbell at the Detroit Lions uses the exact same phrase, OKG. That's what they're looking for, OKG, our kind of guy. All right? So you might have a certain star recruit rating, but if you are not an OKG, they don't want you there, and you've got to fit the system, because if the first words out of your mouth are, how much are you paying me to come into here because my uncle's next door neighbor's roommate's cousins, whatever, says I can go get more at somebody else, fine, go get somewhere else. You either want to play for us or you don't. And I think what you saw better at the end of the second year is this past spring, less people entered the portal. Now, some are always going to enter the portal because the coaching staff has those tough conversations with the kids. And sometimes it's conversations the kids might not admit to out loud. And sometimes it's just, look, thank you for coming in. You worked hard, but you're not at the level we want. So those are always going to happen. And some people don't like hearing those type of conversations, but that's just the reality of upper level athletics. So we had less people enter the portal this year. Now we still had some, and it still was like oof of a situations, but the percentage was way down. And he's starting to put together the type of staff he really wants. One more for you, real quick, and then I'll let you transition. Is talk about staff. Well, two names that are not being mentioned at all. First off, they've hired a general manager now, so all that other responsibilities that originally went on Coach Beck's shoulders because he wasn't working at 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. But they said you can take that window and work. Now they've hired Scott Aligo as their general manager, and he's taking a lot of the administrative NIL, all that kind of recruiting responsibilities that was thrown extra in today's world off of Coach Beck, and that's a huge alleviation. And then folks that know Coastal Carolina football, as a quarterback analysis, Grayson McCall is on payroll and staff, and he is everything Coastal Carolina. I believe he still holds the NCAA record for highest quarterback rating throughout a season. He's a different type of special. He was recruited by the U.S. Army Academy up at West Point to play football and be a quarterback there. If that doesn't tell you what type of character that kid is, much less all the results y'all saw on the field, his concussions and the cheap shots put on him aside, this kid is just a natural born leader. If the U.S. Army wants him, you kind of want those kids in your locker room. Yeah, it's year one learning of the whole coaching thing itself, but he's going to be a tremendous asset to that coaching staff this year. Relatability to the kids, be it quarterback whisperer. He understands a quick read, and he understands how to make a quick, correct read as well. So he's got a lot. He's going to help out with that staff as well. It's going to be a fun season that nobody's going to have high expectations for in the national media outlook. I expect the national media on those preview magazine things and stuff like that to probably give a lukewarm welcome to Coastal Carolina 25-26.
Sure. Well, let's get to the position where it all starts on offense, and where hopefully Grayson McCall probably has the biggest impact, and that's the quarterback. Ethan Vasco and Noah Kim are off the portal, leaving former UNC transfer Tad Hudson as the only QB who took a snap for the Chanticleers last season. Hudson won't be alone, though, as the staff brought in 3 transfers. They have MJ Morris from Maryland, Emmett Brown from San Jose State, and John Hunt from East Tennessee State. And obviously, the search for quarterback 1 is on. What should we make of this room heading into 2025?
I think it's honestly going to come down to just who can pick up all the complexities. And we see Mike Leach's type of offense that's now evolved to Hollingshead's type of offense. And we see it's just fun and throw the ball around. And there's so much more complexities because if the linebacker is situated here, this receiver goes there. It's a lot of reads. It's a lot of learning. So it's going to be a classroom type of situation. Who can do the most in the classroom? And if you're not that they're going to huddle, but if you're breaking the huddle and trying to remember this play goes where, you're already going to lose the play. When you're breaking the huddle and hopefully you're surveying the defense and you know already where the possible mismatch is, because it's about mismatches. And maybe like a wide receiver will line up in the backfield, forcing a linebacker to cover the receiver on a little hitch and go. And then all of a sudden you've got one-on-one on the outside. That's a lot of it is just knowing the classroom. And here's the reality where you and your listeners probably don't want to hear. No one's in that classroom but the head coach, the OC, and the quarterbacks itself. So now I will say this, and anybody can figure this out that puts about a 10 seconds worth of research in it. MJ Morris, I believe was from Maryland, but also initially NC State. There is a direct line connection to Coach Beck. So one would figure that at least personality-wise, there's a true tie. Tad Hudson did get the start at the final bit of the season. You got to figure at least he was the first person in the locker room and gets initial looks. What do I know? But if I'm making an educated guess, I would say those 2 are the front runners. And then they also picked up a kid through the recruiting process, Samari Collier. These freshmen, they're either going to, sit the year or they're really going to shine and give their opportunities. And we're going to find out real quickly in September which freshmen are given real looks and which ones are take the year and learn.
Let's say for a moment, let's assume that it's MJ Morris. If he's the starting quarterback, do you think in this new offense he'll have a similar amount of rushing opportunities that we saw Vasco have last year, or do you think it might be less?
assuming Hollingshead's going to call the plays. Okay, that's a major assumption. Assuming Hollingshead's calling the plays, no, he'll get some design runs, but it's not going to be all. It's not going to be like that. If Beck is calling the plays, then it's a different conversation because
Sure.
it's two different styles of offense, and neither one's right, neither one's wrong. It's which one's going to be working more effective. And I believe Beck's goal is these coaches at the college level have evolved to almost like an NFL style where they have to just be the general overseer of all positions. And that's why you see a lot of these former head coaches stepping back to the OC roles because they missed doing what they did most, and that's just calling the plays. Well, Beck has evolved up, and I believe it's going to be Hollingshead calling the plays at least early in the season, and just making some of the key decisions. And now Beck's still going to be the one, when it's 4th and 1 or 4th and 2, go for it or not. So he's not going to have no say. Let's be clear about that as well.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we were talking before the show that it almost seems like, a Beck style quarterback is probably a little bit different than a Hollingshead offense style quarterback. So it'll be very interesting. And to your point, it's probably who's going to be the one calling the plays and calling the shots. It'll be interesting to see how things shake out, in August.
And that UVA game, I mean, you got to be ready for it. I mean, because you saw the record last season, and there were some games where it got away from them fast. And the last thing you want to do is start the season down 55-16 on the road on a game where you'd really like to take it from them. I mean, this is more than they haven't announced it yet, but it's more than likely going to be a nationally televised game. It's going to be a spotlight focused game. You're going to want to have a good road showing, and this is where recruiting starts. Is opportunities like this, and you put together. The perfect time to play Virginia is week 1. Excellent opportunity.
Yeah.
Inversely, fast forward to almost the end of the season, and they get South Carolina once everybody's tired, everybody's hurt, everybody's got film. The extreme opposite.
Yeah.
So we'll worry about South Carolina when it gets there. But right now, all focus is on UVA. So this time now, when they just have who's showing up to the weight room on Tuesday morning when it's not required, that's going to be a big part of the decision makers. Who's putting in the work when they're starting to run these kid camps and the prospect camps.
Well, moving on to the running game, it almost feels like we might need a meet and greet with this backfield, as it will look very different in 2025 with 6 guys hitting the portal, none bigger than the trio of Braden Bennett, Christian Washington, Simeon Price. They were the top 3 leading rushers in this room. They accounted for 277 rushing attempts, 1,461 yards, and 16 touchdowns in 2024. This room returns the trio of Darren Lloyd, Javon Simpkins, and Matt Pack Jr. They accounted for 42 rushing attempts a year ago. Between those 3, UMass transfer Jalen John and maybe even Damarian Petit. What should we make of this room heading into 2025?
See, you're saying meet and greet, but there is at least one name still left over, and he knows what the running back position is. It's going to be initially at least for the running back position, he's going to be the front runner leadership and saying, watch me, I'm going to take the load and try to pass me. If they pass him, great, But I believe Javon Simpkins is going to be your front runner. They get a transfer portal kid from West Virginia, Chris Henry, coming in. And then, like you said, Pack and Petit, I think will be the 4 competing mostly. And Coastal in the past, I don't know, since they've been at the FBS level, it's always been insert running back here, just add water. So that's the one position, for whatever reason, Coastal's been really strong about and always just been able to produce, even if it's by committee over the course of a season, because, somebody, Braden Bennett, golly, love the kid, but unfortunately he got the injury bug way more than once, and he ran out of eligibility and had to transfer over to Virginia Tech for his final his 5th year. So things like that happen, and that they don't make the transfer portal rules as far as eligibility goes of credits and graduations and stuff like that. But like I said, the West Virginia transfer in, I'm sure he'll be given his opportunities to shine early in practices, and if he makes the most of it, you're going to see him on the field as early as the Charlottesville game. If you don't, then next person up, and we'll go from there. But no, it's not going to be just one. We're past the days of only one running back gets 90% of the carries, regardless.
For those maybe not familiar, how would you kind of describe Simpkins' skill set, or maybe like certain areas he excels at?
So last year, believe it or not, he could slip through the tackles. I mean, you would think on these running backs in history, like the Braden Bennett's of the world, get him on the outside and just let's see what happens, foot race, and he's usually the fastest person on the field. I'm not saying Simpkins isn't fast at all, but he was able to run in through the A gap, through the B gap as well, and hit those holes, and to help, when Ethan Vasco was there, it was a 1-2 punch of a style of play. Now, once again, no new factor is what type of running schemes is Hollingshead going to implement. I still think you'll still see him between the tackles some and get those tough yards, and when they need the 1 yard play, that he would probably be the primary, and maybe you still spread them wide and force the linebackers to make some decisions, possibly opening up even a greater gap hole, and just hit him quick, move him up to the line quick, and just almost like a fullback position, and just hit it fast before they can crowd in. So there's going to be some tricks to it, to how they want to run this. But he was able to play all 3 downs last year in given situations. Sometimes, just the third down back. Sometimes he was there on first and second.
One thing I always remember about a Mike Leach offense that I haven't necessarily seen from many of his folks from his tree, and that's how he utilizes the running backs in the passing game. Really, to me, is more of an extension of the running game. But a Leach running back, it wouldn't be anything for them to get 50 to 60 receptions in a year. Haven't necessarily seen that, from his proteges. But how do you think we might see them use a lot more in the passing game?
And that's believe it or not, that's also an extension of the Beck offense. Beck has no problem throwing the ball out of the backfield to the backs. And I expect to see more of the same. It's all going to be about mismatches and, in the formation, what formation matches up to the defensive formation. And these backs are going to have the opportunity to catch the ball. They're going to have to be able to at least chip off a block and catch a pass. And that's going to determine a lot of who gets on the field, because I'm sure at this level, and I know this sounds, I'm oversimplifying it, but every kid can run with the football. It's going to, how you get the football is going to be the $1 million question that they're going to figure out some quick answers to. But yeah, you're 100% right about that.
Well, let's move over to the wide receiver room. And a year ago, with Sam Pinckney and Jared Brown moving on, we were wondering what this room would look like. Well, the 2025 squad sees three of its top 4 wideouts return. This room is highlighted by the return of Jamison Tucker. He led the team in targets, receptions, yards, and touchdowns just a season ago. Seneca McKee, a UNLV transfer, was second on the team in most of these categories, but he has now graduated. Bryson Graves, Malik Maiga, and former East Mississippi Community College transfer Cameron Wright joined Tucker in returning to this room. We bring back all those guys. You saw 7 other guys hit the portal, and then we saw some transfers come in Malcolm Gilly and Colton Hinton before the spring, and then they've added 2 more guys after the spring in Carmelo English and Eli Aragon. What should we make of this wide receiver room again in 2025? Is it going to be the Jamison Tucker show?
3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. So if you had me to rank the stuff that I feel or that I have the most questions about, I guess is the best way of saying it, outside of Jamison Tucker and Bryson Graves getting the initial looks and saying it's your job to lose, because there's going to be more than two receivers on this field. Let's be clear about that. Holy cow. There's a lot of unknowns in that locker room of who, and now I'm sure they have best guesses and they have some speculations, but one of, we were talking off air, the new world of college football, this is where things just go hidden, and it's intentional because you don't want stuff out there and you don't want stuff being stolen at the last second. Well, the depth chart of the wide receiver room, yes, they officially have depth chart. You can print off their roster today if you want to, and you can count all the wide receivers listed. Having said that, the experience on the field, especially in a teal color uniform, not so much. So now it comes down to speculation, best guesses. Who are the older guys? Probably more than likely going to get some opportunities. Who runs the fastest times of off the ball? Who's got some strong good hands? It's factors like that that are going to put somebody in a position to be the third wide receiver, the fourth wide receiver, and in some cases the fifth wide receiver immediately into play. But yes, Tucker, Graves, they're your front runners. You'll start with seeing some familiar names, at least early on.
All right, let's move over to the tight end group. With this coaching change, how do you expect the tight ends to kind of be utilized in this offense?
So, watching just different years past of like Western Kentucky and just other things, and just remembering how they ultimately use that, the tight end's only going to get a couple of looks, but when they do, they're wide open in the middle and they go for like 40 yards. So for the most part, they're not on the field, and if they are, they're in certain exact packages that are going to be used. So if that trend holds true, you got the Zach Courtney of the world, the Kane Barong, who will probably be the front runners. Brooks Johnson got some playing time last year as well. I'm sure there's packages being devoted to them. And you never know, they might even flank out now because of it as well. Put a bigger guy on the outside and just let him do something and just creativity goes a long way, and it works in a lot of sports, and football is one of those sports where creativity can matter if you do it correctly. And this type of offense, it allows for creativity if it's used correctly. And so don't be surprised if you're seeing tight ends used differently than more a traditional set.
Well, moving over to the offensive line, they had some solidarity in 2024 as they returned 4 of 5 starters between Heston Edwards, Anthony Walton. They were able to cover the loss of left guard Will McDonald. Similar to 2024, this 2025 offensive line brings back some continuity. The Chanticleers will be looking to fill the right side of this line as right guard Donovan Manson has transferred to UNLV and right tackle Zovan Lindsay has graduated. Despite these losses, we saw Anthony Walton take some snaps at right guard in 2024, as well as Joseph Hansen get some at right tackle. So it feels like this offensive line is kind of really set up nicely heading into 2025. What are your thoughts on this group heading into the season?
Well, two things. McDonald was actually 2 years ago when he transfer portaled over to Cal for his final season. And I believe he's now back on staff as well. I got to double check my rememberings of that. But the name you did not mention, and let's just hope for healthiness, Nick Del Grande. All right. More than likely will go back to center. All of these guys you mentioned, none of them are going to be the SEC studs of like 6'7", 6'8", but every one of them is 3 bills. That's for Sunbelt football. You're having a 6'4", 300-some pound guy push on you. That's going to wear you down. Every one of these guys started in the bowl game. Regardless of what you think of the bowl game itself, it gave them live looks on X number of snaps they got to play together as a unit. Del Grande is probably going to be one of the captains of the team, I hope and suspect. He's got a lot of the leadership mentalities, and you want that in your center as well, and just the ability to run the line. I think he's got chances to really be something special for that line, and that line could be one of the strengths this year. Even though, just if you look at that one spot start and say, let's just focus on that, go forward, and what's it look like? And I don't know. I'm really looking forward to see how this line handles this new style of offense.
If you had to take a guess at someone that kind of have a breakout type season in 2025, who would that be?
Well, I'm going to
On
stick
the
with
offense.
not on the offensive line, but just in
Oh
general.
yeah, it can be offensive line. Yeah, anybody, any offensive position.
So I'll say this, and this is for lack of better words, and sorry, viewers and listeners, a not sexy pick. Nick Del Grande. I really think he's going to help solidify the O line, be a true leader to the whole process. And then, if you want some of the playmakers, like I said, Simpkins and Tucker are going to be two of the ones you should instantly, already get your highlighter out and say, okay, that's the one I want to keep my eye on. I think all of them are the obvious initial choices.
Well, moving over to the defense, and similar to the offensive side of the ball, we'll see a new DC here for the Chanticleers and Jeremiah Johnson joining the staff. He spent 15 seasons at the University of Northern Iowa, 9 of which were as a defensive coordinator. He was a defensive coordinator at Kent State in 2022. 2023, he went back to Northern Iowa for his 10th season as a defensive coordinator. And in 2024, he's a defensive coordinator for Louisiana Tech. How would you describe the defensive style or scheme that Coach Johnson plans to run here at Coastal?
So what I'm expecting to see is a 3-4 type of line. Get the big dude in the middle at the nose, and you have your two outside rushers, and then possibly bring up a linebacker into some 4-down situations. But for the most part, I'm pretty much thinking they're going to run a 3-4 set. Now, the difference when we're talking about offense and defense, the offense has a lot of names returning. The defense did lose some of their bigger names, either to graduation, aging out, possibly the whole portal thing. So there are going to be some spots to be filled there. And that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out and who takes onto that. But yeah, I kind of suspect the way that the roster is being built, it's looking like a 3-4 format.
Well, let's dig into the position rooms that Coach Johnson will be coaching. Let's start with the guys up front along this defensive line. This group seems depleted as it loses 9 guys, 7 via the portal and 2 to graduation. None may be bigger than edge Clev Lubin, who registered 46 pressures and 10 sacks for the Chanticleers last season. This group will be anchored by the return of some of the guys on the interior, Sawyer Goram-Welch and Gavin Ransall. What should we make of this room heading into 2025?
Yeah, you mentioned Clev. Oh my gosh, he became a household name by mid-season, and you could just tell somebody like a Florida State of the world was going to come calling. And yeah, that happened. Well, let's start at the nose. I think it's a rule at Coastal Carolina, at least for this season, you have to have a hyphenated last name to play the nose position. So, we'll put Sawyer Gordon Welch in there, 6'4", 307, ding. But then Ezekiel Campbell, Durham Campbell, Campbell, He could spell some minutes there as well. They do have, I think they've got some people in the nose. And the nose, for whatever reason, in Coastal recent history, has been a source of strength. And I don't see that not continuing this season. Throw in Travis as well for there. And then when you get to the outside, now this is where it's going to get a little bit of question marks. Losses happen, and you're just trying to find people who are going to be the next person up. So, is it going to be Ibrahim Diawara? I would say he's going to be a front runner. Noah, and I'm still having trouble with some of these
Arinze.
names. Yeah, so Arinze. So Noah Arinze, how's he going to do? Sam Ross might be getting some early minutes. And then Jordan as well might have a few. The edge position, which used to be a strength, and keep in mind their best recruit of all time just got drafted by the LA Rams, and it's going to be a phenomenal player in the NFL because he's used correctly. And Josiah Stewart, I mean, I've stood next to that guy more than once. He is true NFL studly talent. And the Rams got themselves a hell of a pick. Michigan, I understand why they took him. But when you listen to him talk, he still calls Coastal home. So it's not like Coastal doesn't know how to recruit the edge position. It's just who's going to be the next.
Sure.
Who's going to be the next Josiah Stewart, basically. Switching over to linebacker, it's the Shane Bruce show, where this, it was his year last year. Guess what? It's his year again. You got Luke Murphy there as well and helping out. So that 3-4 combination before we get to the back end, the back third of the defense, there are still some consistent pieces there, and that's where the leadership's going to come from. It's just going to be how we plug in some of the key positions and some of these newer faces that have been roster members, and now it's their turn to shine, and we can finally get a real look.
Before we get to those defensive backs, going back to the linebackers just for a second, everyone knows about Shane Bruce. You told us about him last year and to watch out, and you were right about that. Is there someone in that linebacker room that folks maybe aren't talking about or aren't familiar with yet that you think they will by the time the season ends?
So that's actually a really good question. Their linebacker room is flooded. I don't know how many linebackers other schools keep. That's a great question. I would love to know the answer to of what's true depth versus just roster space takers. I'm going to throw out one name for you. So Luke Murphy from Eastern Michigan came in. And if you're asking me for one name to look out for, I'm going to plug him in right away, just saying you're going to see him contribute heavily to start things off with.
Awesome. Moving over to that defensive backfield, and we talk about the edge position being a problem, and that might be even more magnified, or potentially being a problem. It might be even more magnified for the guys in the defensive backfield if it is a problem and they can't get to the quarterback early and often, because it seems like they're going to be breaking in almost a brand new secondary here in 2025. They lose 7 guys who saw over 100 snaps and played more than 17 snaps a game in 2024. Probably the biggest loss. Again, a guy you told us last year that was going to break out. I think the words you used were McDoom Island. And first team all conference cornerback Matthew McDoom's also Cincinnati, so that's a big loss. But they do have some leadership there at safety with AJ Williams and Samarian Gordon coming back. Cornerback, I'm assuming they're probably leaning on Zach Cody and Miles Woods. But kind of what do we make of this secondary here in 2025?
Well, yeah, I was going to say the Zach Cody experience is this year. I mean, sometimes, hey, look, even a broken clock is right twice a day, folks. Okay, so yeah, I got some picks spot on right last year, but I also missed badly on some others. So It's nice. We're only showing my good side, but I do have that face for radio for a reason. So yes, it's the Zach Cody experience, and he's the only cornerback. Now they've got a plethora of safeties. They could easily move a safety over. Um, the only cornerback with true multiple game experience coming back. So he's going to need some help, and he's going to have to step up and do more than what was given last time. And obviously they want the more responsibility. They want they want the trust and the coaching staff. But then just the defensive backfield in general, golly, I'm counting it now, and I can tell you 6 names that could be in contention for the safety spot. You mentioned Gordon. We got Jones, Robinson, Woods, Chase Jackson. So there's quite a few that have game experience, and now who's just going to step up and be the likely starter, where all of them contributed throughout the season, but now it's just who is the true next man up. So the safety position, it's going to be okay. It's the corner position and how they play the corners that I'm really interested in seeing. And here's just a sideball variable, and this is true for all 134 teams. What I think has evolved to the most important position defensively in college football, or just in football in general, and I'm a huge O-line fan, and I'm even a huger D-line fan. So defensive tackle is always my favorite position. I honestly think the most important position in college football now is the slot corner. And if you can become a slot corner and to defend that slot receiver, you're going to get yourself a first-round NFL grade pick. And so what I'd hope to find is somebody can come out of this mix and be a slot corner, because no longer is it a third down position. That slot receiver is now being used pretty much every down. And that's out of everything out there, if you take the untraditional format of how positions play out and just the alignment of positions, who's going to play that slot corner, and just because that's where all the hidden yardage is constantly being eaten from.
All right, much like the offensive side, if you have to pick a defensive player from any of these position groups to have a breakout type season in 2025, who would that be?
Well, that eliminates me saying Shane Bruce then, because
he could have a bigger year than he did a year ago.
Breakout means somebody new, somebody different. It's once again, it's not going to be a pick that's going to make all the highlight reels. But if you're, let's start at the interior, right in the middle. Let's go Sawyer at the defensive tackle, the nose tackle position. That's going to be a key position to watch out for. If they can handle that nose and block the A gap of the runs, that's going to help the defense out tremendously. I'm also kind of really interested to see how this Luke Murphy guy is going to transition from MAC football to the Fun Belt. So if you're looking for breakout, there's 2 of them right there. And then I'll throw out a third name. You mentioned earlier, just Gordon in the defensive backfield. Is he going to be the one that steps up and gets, maybe him or Jones might be the ones that earns their initial looks.
Well, we've talked offense, we've talked defense. Let's talk a little bit about special teams. Give those guys some love. Heading into 2025, are there any concerns with those units?
I was talking earlier about the whole transfer portal thing, and we didn't lose many people at the end of the second portal. And can we all agree that when you have to use the phrase second portal, it's ridiculous? And what type of world are we living in? Anyway, so about an hour and a half after given a scholarship, Kate Hensley enters the portal and finds a home at West Virginia. Officially, there is no kickers on roster. Now, if you go back to the signing days, a kid by the name of Hayden Tessier, 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 I believe is how you say it. He was kicker. He's listed on some rosters as punter, but he's not going to be punting at least year one. They still have the kid from Australia, Safandi, who's going to be doing the punting. So I think it's Tessier's job to lose because this happened after the completion of spring football. I mean, you know, that's just, I'm sorry, it's just not right. And the coach is going to be the one held responsible when some walk on or somebody who we didn't mention all of a sudden misses an extra point early on and might be the difference, or a 40-yard field goal. So yeah, the whole kicking game. You get your popcorn, folks. It's going to get real interesting real fast.
Well, now that spring practice is over, which position group or groups do you think is the most concerning heading into 2025?
So let's go back to the offensive side. Most concerning, past couple of years, the wide receiver groups. You've had your headliners with Old Man Sam and Brown, Jared Brown, and then just some other ones over time. We know who can do what, but we also don't know who cannot not perform. And so we have two of the assumed answers, but we don't have. I mean, like I said, we could easily see a starting five. Well, that still leaves a minimum of 3 spots with a lot of choices. So the wide receiver unit is the one either I feel the least confident about sharing information about, or the most confident I have the most concerns about. How about that?
Sure. In today's age of NIL, revenue sharing, and the transfer portal, how have you seen that change Coastal Carolina's recruiting philosophy?
Well, they've and that's a great question. I'm really glad you asked that question, because this has been something the entire campus has taken a whole new approach to. They're out with the old, they're now in with the new. And I mean that as far as like staff goes. And it's a whole new turnover, it's a whole new mindset. They're hiring new positions and they're creating new responsibilities for this. They've created a whole new NIL just concept in mind of just the players earning some earnings with their stores and such. But one of the other things that they've done to help with this process is they're starting to get sponsors. Okay. And here's the best 2 things that happened from the spring. And Coach Beck, I'm sure of it. I know I'm right on this. He's loving this because this is the only 2 things people are talking about the spring from. Nobody's talking about anything that happened on the field. They're talking about free concessions for all paid admissions. And because of that, Yahoo Sports and CBS Sports got wind of it and brought it nationally. Therefore, Pat McAfee got wind of it and had a little Twitter banter with Coach Beck. And Coach Beck has opened up his arms and said, come, Pat, come one, come all. Let you experience free popcorn, free nachos. You still have to buy your own beer and a free soda. Experience, the surf turf and come through it. That's the number one and top 2 takeaways and top 2 headlines. Nobody's talking about anything on the field. And as a head coach, that's your number one goal. Fly under the radar, keep quiet about everything, and let nothing out. And they've accomplished that. And that's part of the goals as well with this whole NIL thing. No more spring games. That's a thing of the past. And keep everything close-chested. Trust your enemies less and keep your friends even closer type of concept. And just we're at the stage now and the age now where these G5 teams, if they're going to be competitive, they've got to find new ways of doing things. And Coastal Carolina as a whole, look at how just they're revamping the basketball programs and just the volleyball teams, the baseball, softball teams, all of it's a whole new concept, and they're trying to stay ahead of the curve and create the curve, because that's all it is. You're creating the curve of how to compete in today's world when you're going to make somebody. It's just every single school. Texas State's going to have this happen. You know, Boise State's a bad example. Louisiana Tech is another great example. Somebody is going to become the headline players for every one of these schools. Well, all the P5 schools are going to get wind of these kids on the tape and say, oh, this left guard here knows what he's doing. Oh, this linebacker here can do whatever. Oh, your quarterback can throw. We're going to take them. So how do you build a system where you're replenishing people at all times? If you have an extra 20, 25 minutes, I'm sure it's on YouTube somewhere or some video clip somewhere. But I would really highly recommend your listeners and viewers go back to the end of the season, regular season last year. Coach Beck gave probably the most sincere 20-minute, openly honest answers of today's world of coaching and college football and the impossibleness that is his job, yet the expectations are through the roof. And it's you got to be a little bit crazy these days to want to coach in the world of college football. You're going to have to work 100 hours a week every week, even like in February, and just knowing that people are always going to constantly say, I can go elsewhere and get more money because my uncle said so. And it's just, it's a new world and a new process.
Well, what do you think? We talked about the concerns, but what do you think the main strength of this 2025 team will be?
I started with the word giddy. You're bringing me right back to it because I can't help but be excited and giddy about this new look offense and what it's going to do. And there's a lot of excitement. And yeah, we can each have our subjective opinions of who's going to be throwing the ball to start the season and who's going to be receiving the ball. But at the end of the day, just the concept of the style of play, it's going to be a fun watch. And if you look through the history of the Leech Tree, and then it was more specifically Holland's Head, they produce numbers. They're getting points every single game, every single year. So this creativity works. And so I'm, people who watch it on a Saturday afternoon casually, they just see, oh, throw, pass, catch, score, where other people who are like the deeper down will see a greater level of complexity and just the mad science genius of why that play worked. And that is what makes me super excited for 2025.
Well, what does success look like for Coastal Carolina here in 2025?
So most people measure success by wins and losses. And in order to keep your job, that's usually measured by wins and losses. So until somebody says otherwise, that has to be the number one methodology of how you rate people. I'm going to go a couple of more complexities. How does success measure? I would compare it to last year's totals as well. All right. Offense. Are you averaging more yards? Are you averaging more points? And is it up from a year ago? Defense. Is the opposite true? Turnovers. Is the offense causing them or containing? And defense. Are you bringing back the black coke again and the swarm defense from years ago? Are you getting the ball? Those are all measurables that do not go unnoticed by the coaching staff, but most people start with the W's and L's. So let's get to the W's and L's. And I said this last year, and I'm going to say it again this year. Nobody in the Sun Belt's going undefeated. They're going to have at least one loss each, probably two, inside of conference play. On top of that, they've got three big name non-conference schedules games, 2 of which are on the road. They open the season at Virginia. All right. Virginia's figured its way out of the horribleness, and they're starting to really ramp up. So this is not we can steal this game opportunity. They're going to have to earn whatever they get out of the Virginia situation, and it's on the road in Charlottesville. Best thing about it, though, week 1, holy cow, it's like UCLA 2 years ago. If Dante Moore didn't come in, Coastal Carolina steals that game. So it could be simple as just a one-person factor. 2 weeks later, I believe it's 2 weeks later, they host East Carolina. And if you remember back to the Birmingham Bowl, that was a beatdown. That was just, right around when Beck was coming in and Chadwell had left. So that was a whole thing of itself. But that was the most recent time those 2 schools met. Now they're coming to Brooks September 13th, I believe, but you can double check me on that. So that's going to be a great matchup. And then at the end of the season, they go to Columbia to play South Carolina, who a lot of people are projecting South Carolina to be in the college football playoff hunt. So you got 3 non-conference games right there that could easily go either way. Well, easily go possibly negative, and 2 of which I think honestly could be possible situations where it's like, look what just happened. And this has happened before. I mean, Old Dominion all too well. Look what they did to Virginia Tech a couple years ago. So anything's possible. Don't ever say no. Don't ever say whatever, and go Ted Lasso and go believe. So worst case scenario, you're already looking at our best case scenario with a worse, I don't know, some 7-5 is not a bad year. 7-5 is not a bad year. 8-4, 9-3. I do think Coastal's going to surprise people offensively. Just because they aren't announcing a starting quarterback doesn't mean that they're going to be a 4-win program or a 2-win program. I think the bar has been set the past few years of how many consecutive years now Coastal has made a bowl game. That streak was a very important one they attained last year when, golly, that bottom just fell out fast last year and just nothing. The juju just was not there. But the fact that they made that bowl game was a major continued check mark and just accomplishment. And those that were part of it, I think with hindsight 2020 agree to that statement. I see that continuing. I really do. I think they're going to continue making a bowl and hopefully push for the East. It's going to be interesting to see. That East is going to be it's gonna be a gauntlet to say the least this year.
Absolutely, I agree with you on that. Well, Charlie, we've kind of covered a lot of ground today, but is there anything else you want to share or think that we should know about this 2025 Coastal Carolina Chanticleers football team?
Well, I'm just glad you gave me the opportunity to ramble like I did, and we'll see what all makes the editing room floor. But yeah, like I said, the number one main thing I was most excited about was the new offensive style. The second thing I was most excited about was that no headlines came out of Conway, South Carolina during the spring weeks, except for the free concessions and Pat McAfee not agreeing with it. That's the best case scenario, and we had a home run on best case scenarios of everything else is under the radar because the past couple of years it was look how many people left and what's going on here, and all that's gone. And he's got his OKGs now.
Well, Charlie, thank you for taking some time out of your day to spend with us and share your knowledge. We greatly appreciate it.
Oh, I'm always happy to. So hopefully I can get some help out you all out in the future and do what I can.
Yeah, we'll do it again, so for sure. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're listening in podcast form, please rate and review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Thank you all for your support. And until the next time, we are the G5 Hive.